The Ask the Experts Theater at CSEMP Edge is sponsored by Gaines.
All right. As you come on over and get to hear a few words about the returns world, my name is Tony Sciarrota, Executive Director, formerly of the Reverse Logistics, now part of the National Retail Association. So let's talk about our guests today, Troy Campbell from the Home Depot, Mary Cho from Liquidity Services, and Joe Desimorier from DHL. I'm going to let them do their own introductions. But most important, so why are we here? This is why we are here, among other reasons. We're here to talk about the massive amount of returns in the electronic space, the apparel space, and frankly, every space. And just to give you an idea, the picture on your left, that would be electronic waste that's being dumped around the world. The picture on the right, on your right, is apparel that you can see from outer space sitting in a desert in Chile, among other places. This is going on too much for many reasons that we're going to get to talk about. How about some numbers? That always helps set the stage. The numbers have gone since I took over the Reverse Logistics Association in 2016. Returns back then about 300 billion. We've gone from 300 billion, we are right on top of 900 billion in retail value in the United States alone. Keep in mind, that's retail value. That does not include B2B, and there's a lot of that, maybe half the same amount. It's a significant amount. And by the way, as a Reverse Logistics Association, we focused on being global. This report comes to us from the National Retail Federation, our new parents, and they commission organizations to work to put this one together. We also did Europe. We did Amsterdam this year, and we found a source for their information showing in Europe the estimate of annual returns, again, retail value, 642 billion euro, which makes it equivalent to the world's 21st largest economy. In Europe, they're a little more specific in detail about brick and mortar rate, which has been around 6 to 8% for decades. It's the e-commerce rate we all know is driving it higher. And the most returned category has been apparel and shoes. So that's why we've gone beyond just electronics. And in fact, having the Home Depot, we cover all kinds of product categories. So what I want to also, before I turn it over to my guest panelist, so where do we go with this? I mean, it's a pretty frightening picture that is really invisible to many people in the logistics world. So I'm pleased to show you the reverse logistics being the cornerstone of the circular economy. If you've not heard that word enough this week, you should. Sustainability on steroids has become the circular economy. And here is a representation of what can happen in the future with our products. And it isn't just about selling them, it's about what happens after the sale. And that's where the National Retail Federation steps in a big way, because we represent the retail community, and now we do it around the world. And it's really retailers are the center of this because they face the consumers every day. So I'll leave that up for the presentation. And what I'll do is I will turn it over to first Miss Mary Cho, and I'm going to join you on the floor. So if you have questions while we're going through this, raise your hands and we'll talk about it. Mary.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Cho from Liquidity Services. We're a service provider for solutions with reverse logistics. I help retailers and manufacturers implement solutions to liquidate their returns and overstock products and maximize recovery. Prior to joining Liquidity Services, I was in a program management role for technology industry, which helped me focus on innovative solutions and operational efficiencies in the reverse logistics space.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Troy Campbell. I am the Director of Reverse Logistics for Home Depot. I've been with Home Depot for 30 years, 16 of those in the reverse field. My role really is supporting the four reverse facilities we have throughout the country. We flow about $1.9 billion worth of COGS to those sites on an annual basis, and about anywhere from 45 to 50-ish million units flow through those sites. And we call them our orange-blooded associates. We employ 1,600 orange-blooded associates throughout those four facilities. And really, my role with Home Depot in that, outside of helping support those four sites, is trying to drive a reverse culture within Home Depot and understanding the A to Z of that reverse culture and what that means from the time we buy product to the time that product doesn't sell and has to find a way to disposition it. That's really what my role is.
Go ahead, sir.
Joe Desormier. I am with DHL Supply Chain. Important to note, we're not the division of DHL that has the little yellow trucks and does deliveries. We are the supply chain division. We're the largest 3PL in the world and in North America. We operate warehouses on behalf of our clients around the world, and we manage both forward and reverse logistics. I've been in reverse logistics for quite a while. Started in the early 2000s back with Ingram Micro Logistics, where we managed both forward and reverse supply chains for major high-tech manufacturers. I've been with Inmar Intelligence as well, a company that DHL Supply Chain recently acquired now, and ran some business development for them, creating solutions in the reverse world for both retailers and manufacturers. And I've also been the VP of Business Development for Liquidity Services, most recently before DHL Supply Chain, really learning a lot about and helping customers with value recovery services. So I've taken that experience, brought it to DHL Supply Chain. I've been there about 3 years now. My first 2 years, I was working on the North American returns strategy for DHL, which led to both us acquiring Inmar recently and also the formation of a returns product, which is a group of subject matter experts that lends expertise to the rest of our business on returns. And I'm leading that product now, and that's my role. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Joe. All right. If you listen to some of the numbers, you may have noticed, and I've got 25 years in the reverse space, having been with Phillips. I was a happy-go-lucky salesperson. Maybe some of you were. And one day Phillips said, "We have a returns problem. You go fix it." And that's what we proceeded to do. So you've got about 100, I hate to say it like that, you've got over 50 years of experience up here in the reverse world, which is probably more than most of us in the group, most of you in the group have. So we're going to talk about it. I won't ask the obvious question, who here has a degree in reverse logistics, because they don't exist. Not yet, not to speak of. We're going to tackle some questions, and we're open very much to any questions that you have. But we're going to start with Troy, because retailers are, as I said, kind of the center of this universe. And the topic is about how to become more circular, how to turn returns into revenue. And Troy, Home Depot's done pretty well at that. And so the obvious question that I know I faced at Phillips, and you probably have at Home Depot, is, do new sales channels, do the stores get hurt by the stuff that you liquidate and turn into revenue for Home Depot?
Depends who you ask. No, look, so I say that jokingly because,
Correct.
you think about it, if you're a store manager of one of our stores and all of a sudden you see a DeWalt tool online or at some strip mall being sold at 60% of the retail value, you're immediately thinking, you're hurting my revenue, you're hurting my revenue. I think what sometimes we have to understand, there's a different buyer sometimes that goes to buy these items that goes to Home Depot. Yeah, we may be losing some of those folks, but you're going to need a battery for that DeWalt. They're going to come to Home Depot. You may need an accessory for that DeWalt tool. You're going to go to Home Depot. So either way, you can look at it two ways, right? You can say you're hurting my revenue, but yet that buyer is not the buyer that typically walks in the Home Depot store at all times. And if they do buy something outside, they're going to need the accessory, which is at Home Depot, where they're going to drive more sales potentially than you would have in the first place. So that's kind of how I look at it, that we're actually helping some of the sales, and we're not hurting ours. Ever since we've had our reverse sites open and doing liquidations, we have not seen any decline in any store sales that attributed to what we're doing on the liquidation market.
And I appreciate Troy's answer on that. We certainly heard the same thing at Phillips from the new sales team. And since I was one of them, it created some animosity once in a while. You're stealing our sales. But to Troy's point, that's more often said than actually evidenced of. And that's important. And that's what's big about creating the circular economy. Now, what that means, though, is you have to find good partners. And Mary, I was going to come to you next. Because one of the questions we talked about was, what are the key capabilities that you think an industry partner like Liquidity Services has to offer the retailers?
So we offer many different types of solutions for reverse logistics based on the type of products, condition,
Right.
value of the products, any specific objectives of the retailer as far as recovery goes. There are several innovative solutions that we have launched recently with one of the online retailers where we are leveraging machine learning data, so the product's return history, reviews, to determine if the product needs to be dispositioned to liquidation. So those products would get routed directly to our warehouse for either B2B or B2C marketplaces, there's another solution where we would exchange informations on weights and dims and value category of the products and virtually build pallets. Instead of having to assemble a pallet for auctions, you actually locate a winning bidder. Once the winning bidder pays for the auction, that's when the retailer will pull the inventory and ship the inventory directly from their return center. So it cuts out a lot of the transportation lags, and it maximizes recovery at the same time.
Great, fantastic. And by the way, thanks to the circular economy and the returns industry, we now have a new retail channel called bin stores. And what Mary just described are the companies that buy a 26 pallet load of Gaylords, put them in a storefront, open them up, and sell them. And it's a flea market, and people line up for miles to get to this stuff sometimes. It's amazing. But that's new. There's a lot of different ways. And Joe, one of the questions we talked about is, besides using multiple sales channel outlets, as Mary was describing, you could talk about some of the analytics behind the value recovery process, if you would.
Yeah, sure, Tony. Yeah, so we call that value recovery analytics. And that's an area that we've really been focusing on a lot in recent years. And it's one thing to have returns come back, flow into the process, and then move them through sales channels. But making a science out of what you do with those products, what work you invest in those products, and what channels they go to is really the new frontier. So looking at when a product comes in, if it's not A grade, what would that product sell for in its current condition? What condition could you upgrade it to with some work, refurbishment, repair, repackaging? How much will it cost to perform that work, and comparing that cost to the increase in value you would get by increasing the grade? And by the way, the work that you put into it, you've got some science behind that too, because now you start to measure how long does it take to perform a service? What's the cost of labor? What's the cost of materials? So what goes into each of those steps, making a science out of that, and then looking at what sales channel do you use, and you start with all of those analytics, you start to know the sales channel you're going to use before you even do the work on the product, because you need to know that to predict the recovery, to look at the investment you're going to put into that product. So that's where we're spending a lot of time today, is on value recovery analytics.
Absolutely. And along those lines, I want to talk about the fact that there's not much automation in the reverse space. It's almost diametrically opposed. You saw the pictures. You have to touch that stuff almost one at a time. With one exception, there is very good software out there that companies like Liquidity and DHL are using, the software that tracks the UPC number and can determine its value in different marketplaces, as Joe and Mary were alluding to. So that's important to know. There is good software out there today that does that. Is there good automation anywhere else? Well, I'm coming back to Troy. Troy and Home Depot let our members tour their facilities, and we don't see a lot of automation there. Troy, you mentioned a couple of numbers, 1,600 associates, 54 million units. Those are the biggest pain points, but talk about maybe other pain points in the returns process, because what you want to do is also maximize asset recovery.
Right. We want to, eliminate landfill avoidance is the other thing we want to do. We do not want things going to landfill, and we want to, maximize any revenue we get. Ultimately, we want to go back to the vendor, right? But at the end of the day, like I always ask the question, who returns product to a store, right? You and I do. How do we return product? Right? It's going to be in a Walmart bag, and it's got a bunch of parts in there. Some that maybe were supposed to be in there, some that aren't, some are missing, some are broken. Where's the UPC on that the system is going to read? And so that's the challenge. And I use the box fan as the infamous one. That was a great example. So a box ceiling fan flows great through our forward distribution sites, right? It's not too heavy. It's maybe 30 inches long, maybe 12 inches wide. It flows great. Well, when that fan comes back, I have two blades sticking out of the box, a motor that's not even really in the box completely. That's not going to flow in any kind of conveyor system that's designed for that. So the associates that Tony mentioned is really because it's very manual. It's a very, we can convey some of our product. We can put some sensors in there to scan the stuff that does come back nicely if the customers are shipping it back nicely. But when they're not, and they're not many times than they are, how do you flow that through any kind of systems that you see today? I know True's here. We are partners with True. We had some True systems in our warehouse in our Pennsylvania building. And even that is our most automated facility. And we probably tried to over-automate it, in my opinion, because there's some stuff, if you've heard of an ASRS, everyone know what an automated sort and retrieval system is? But we thought that'd be a great thing to have for Home Depot, right? It's probably 20, 30% utilized because it's over-automated. It's not really meant for reverse because of what I mentioned earlier. These products don't come back in the way that it flows through that system very easily. So we have to have human interaction in order to package it to get it into that system, which really defeats the whole productivity purpose of doing that in the first place. So it's challenging. We're still open. We're still trying different things. I don't think there is no automation for it. It's just finding that niche where it'll support 70, 80% of our volume.
Thank you, Troy. And again, I'm really proud to say that the NRF, world's largest retail trade association, took an interest in this, wants to develop the circular economy, and recognizes that returns, something has to happen with them different. And Troy and Home Depot, they've been working at this a while. Mary, I'm going to come back to you because what other evolving trends are you seeing that could positively affect net asset recovery? Because that's really, at the end of the day, Troy and all the retailers need to worry about how much money can we get for this stuff. Hate to say it that way. We'd like to be just good, stewards of the earth. But at the end of the day, how much is it going to cost and how can we get more for it? If you would, Mary, go ahead.
Sure. So some of the recent trends to increase or maximize recovery for our retail clients is leveraging the live stream options, such as Whatnot and TikTok Live or TikTok Shop, eBay Live. Those platforms really provide the engagement, the instant engagement that we need with the end buyers. So the closer we get to the end buyers, the higher the recovery. Not to say that there's no space for B2B marketplaces, because there is. Those marketplaces tend to provide higher selling velocity versus the D2C marketplaces, but D2C will provide the higher recovery, but of course with a little bit more operational costs. So I think definitely with both B2B and D2C, and the streaming live auctions that is so popular now, we can, tailor special solutions based on our clients' product types, value, condition.
And to Mary's point, if you've never seen the Whatnot website, you should. I mean, you got about 30 seconds. They're flashing products constantly and getting people to bid on them. And it's quite a new, I mean, we thought bin stores were cool. This has gone a step further. This is bin stores on steroids. I do want to ask, for those of you in the group, most of us know the secondary market. Hopefully you know some of the secondary market. You can guess that eBay is probably the biggest player around. Any guesses as to, I think number 2 will surprise you. Number 2 and 3 are not well known. Number 2 in the US is Facebook Marketplace. Those of you who have ignored it for years, it's there and it's selling a lot of stuff. And actually now Nextdoor is becoming one of the top 5 places to liquidate, which is not a usual place for liquidity to go. But your point about the auctions was excellent. And Joe, we're coming back to you because these are evolving channels. Again, 10 years ago, who thought of a bin store? Now we've got live stream auctions. A lot of this is direct to consumer. And you mentioned you could name a couple of others that are connected to that. And some of this is traditional, non-traditional. There's the cost of moving things. So talk about the other kinds of marketplaces that are evolving too.
Well, not necessarily marketplaces, but I agree with Mary's point about getting directly to the consumer, right? So, and Tony, I was actually going to talk about bin stores, and you stole my thunder a little bit. So, bin stores are obviously a way to not only sell to a consumer, but move those bulk items to a consumer. So, low value items, doing that very economically. And there are also multiple warehouse pickup options going on now. So, taking the concept of maybe a factory store or an outlet and extending that and having multiple brands inside of a warehouse where you're advertising online, and instead of having to ship and having that transportation expense, people in the local market are coming by and picking up those goods. They can even test those goods and try them so that the returns on those items decrease. So really getting rid of a lot of those other costs that come along with getting products to consumers.
Absolutely, and very good points about getting direct to the consumer. By the way, we don't think of them in the second, well, we do. The secondary market also still includes people like the Goodwill stores, Salvation Army. They're all very proactive, and they're very proud of being a circular economy. I think the Goodwill people say we were the first circular economy store out there. So very interesting to consider other options. And Joe, especially when you talk about the warehouse pickup, it is certainly cheaper because the consumer touches it, feels it, decides right then and there. And if it's a return, you're not paying for the shipping. And that's one of our biggest nightmares, right?
Absolutely.
For that. So, but the bin stores, Joe, are they all fly-by-nights, one-night stands, one-weekend stands? Talk to that just a little bit, because that's a market I don't know if everyone knows enough about.
Yeah, I mean, and Mary, you can probably chime in maybe more than I can on this, but I think they're becoming more and more a staple out there. I mean, it's a successful business model, and you're right. I've been to several. I went to one where they opened at 10 a.m. We got there at 8:30, and there was already a line that was about 100 feet long outside the store. So you're absolutely right. And just finding parking for these places has been crazy. So yeah, there are multiple providers getting into this space. I mean, even Goodwill has this model, right? Goodwill is now putting out bins to sell in that fashion.
Troy, you had something to
Yeah,
add.
just on the bin stores is interesting. Just take what we learned is that this is about 3-4 years ago, we had a customer come in and wanting to buy stuff that we were actually putting in the landfill. And we looked at it as bottom of the barrel, not worth anything. And they're like, we want that. I'm like, yeah, but I produce way too much of that for you. No, we'll take it all. I'm like, same thing. I'm like, what are you gonna do? You're crazy. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago. They are absolutely killing it to this day. And we still send them all that stuff. And it's just like Tony mentioned, it starts off at a certain price one day and it goes down to like 25 cents on Sunday. And he goes, it's my busiest day. And I'm like, it's crazy. It's just amazing that the stuff that we thought that there's no other outlet for this. We've scraped through it. It's no one's going to want to buy this. And then there's an outlet. And that bin stores, he's growing that business every year over and over again.
And Mary, from your side, those bin stores, you talked about being able to customize pallets. Is that part of the strategy with the bin stores for liquidity?
Yes, we actually just launched our very first bin store in Columbus, Ohio last month because we saw the business model being very promising. And we also included our single item auction platform, local pickup model into the same location. So if you bid on a auction on our liquidation.com, there are typically bulky items that are not worth reshipping again. You can come and pick up the item to save on shipping costs. At the same time, shop at our bin store. So I don't know if folks are familiar with the bin store model, but it's a descending pricing model where the first day when the fresh shipment comes in, most products are priced a little higher, and then the per unit pricing decreases over the week until the new products come in and replenishes the stock. So it triggers quite a bit of bargain hunters that come in looking for a good bargain on household goods. So we're excited to see this model continue.
It's crazy model, but it does seem to be going further and further. And the fact that your companies, the industry partners, can segregate pallets also improves your asset recovery, right?
That's right. So we can, certainly glean data from, what's considered popular for the various consumer sectors, and then also work back with our manufacturers and retails based on the type of products that they provide to be able to market to the specific consumer segments.
And thank you, Mary. We've covered some good basic ground. And again, I'm on the floor with the microphone. If you have a question you want to ask of these, there we go. We'll take a chance here.
I don't know if you want to take this chance. This question is more for Troy. Out of curiosity, and I know you're just probably speaking from the Home Depot factor, but what percentage of your returns go to either back to the vendor or out to the secondary marketplace?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, on our perspective, we put about between 70 and 80% back to vendor. And look, we strive for higher every day because that's the 100% where we want our product to go. It's better revenue for us. It gets credit back to the vendor. It fluctuates depending on like what seasonality we're in. So certain seasonalities, those vendors don't want it back. So that's the case where that policy is, destroy or liquidate. They don't even want it. So, but where the vendor wants it, it's probably in the low 70s where they really want it back. And that has to do with the way it gets returned back. Like I said earlier, certain times things do come back that we can't even get it back to the vendor because of the situation of the way that's packaged. And we have a customer experience team that's working with us to say, how can we get the consumer to package that product better? Like we have to almost educate the consumers. We can't just say, hey, here's a label, send it back. Right? We really got to do a better job at giving them directions. Here, maybe here's a box when you return something that you can pick up at a UPS store to repackage it with something else in there, because that's what we need to work at, because that would allow us to increase that percentage a little higher to go back.
That was a very good question. And from a Phillips perspective, I can tell you that when I took over the returns, we actually created a returns group at Phillips. We never had one. We were doing a lot of just get rid of it in the field. And that's not a good business model. And the other aspect is, do you want to protect your brand? And Phillips finally realized we do. We don't want it at a flea market out of our control, because ultimately Phillips and the brands get the phone calls anyways. Ultimately, it's really not completely Home Depot that gets the calls. They get the walk-ins, but the phone calls are driven by people with the brand in their hands, wherever they got it. So there were challenges there. And to Troy's point, number one, it's higher recovery for the retailer. But number two, the manufacturer wants to protect their brand. They're going to do that. Destroy in field or allowance in lieu of returns is a slippery slope that I've never seen a financial ROI that says you can win on that one, okay? So that was a good question. Thank you. Gave us a chance to touch base on some others. As we talk about the massive amount of returns, I'll come back with questions there. I just want to cover in terms of the volumes that are being dealt with. I'll come back to you, Joe. What are you seeing in terms of technology and automation that will be able to help make a difference with the volumes of returns being processed?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of innovation on the higher end products, right? And that's probably going to be where it starts. And for instance, with mobile devices, we've got facilities that, I mean, when a box comes in from a consumer, it's hard to automate opening that box and seeing what the condition is. Maybe you've got broken glass in there. I think it's going to be a while before you can automate that piece of it. But we have people that introduce that product into the automation, and then the diagnostics, the testing, the software updating is all automated. It flows through the facility, the cleaning, the grading, the taking photos and images of the devices, the put away, the ASRS storage. So the picking, you can pick like by IMEI or serial number. The packing, we've got robotic arms that do the packing. So when you've got a product that has high volume, high value, and a pretty consistent form factor, you can really use automation well to your benefit in returns. Yes. And we see it's really moving the needle with labor savings, with speed to recovery, speed to have that available in the secondary market, and time is money. And then really more than anything, it's the accuracy of the automation that's driving a lot more recovery in the secondary market. So we see a lot of innovation coming through that. And I think over time, it's going to get to the lower value products as well. But right now, it's just on the high end.
And just to wrap up on that before I take the question, Mary, any other new technology on the horizon that Liquidity would want to share with the group?
Sure. I mentioned earlier that we work very close with a major online retailer to integrate our inventory systems. So we build pallets virtually, if you will, based on weights and dims of individual products in the value and categories. So we're actually listing, or I guess virtually building the pallet and listing it on our auction website. And it doesn't get touched. The products doesn't get touched or removed for shipping to the winning bidder until auction closes. So it gives flexibility to our retailer too if they decide to change the disposition and resell on their main marketplace or home storefront. So it's very minimal touch, low cost, but high recovery and exposure to various buyer bases at the same time.
And as we talk about returns and grading, interesting to think about things like big and bulky, including mattresses, big ranges, refrigerators. What do you do with those things? But I'm proud to tell you about grading is becoming automated. And you may not be aware of the fact that the Cellular Technology Industry Association, CTIA, spent years getting Samsung and Apple in the same room together to talk about what's going to be a grade A, grade B, etc. They actually developed measurements saying certain number of inches, half inches, etc., millimeters would constitute grade A versus grade B. They've been able to automate that. And so now some cell phone manufacturers and retailers are able to put them through a device that I've seen in action, maybe everyone else has. The device measures the amount of scratches, etc., and spits out a grade that's more reliable than what you read on eBay or Amazon or no one in particular, but what you read on websites and it says grade A, what does that really mean? So there's the challenge of grading that all of our partners here are focused on. We don't have it yet in the consumer goods space. We only have it in the cell phone space. But hopefully we will get that. So I think there was a question back here. Let me go.
This question is really for Troy, kind of a global kind of sense. As we looked at the pandemic age and the focus on direct-to-consumer, a lot of companies were taking the approach of, preloading inventory pre-sale. Now with the circular economy, how would you say that it affects your cash flow and the inventory positions that you've been taking because you have more abundant capabilities to get that recouping of the value of the dollar?
Yeah, that's not too much in our reverse space, but like our inventory really, we're able to flow that product, I think, quicker now than we used to. I'm not sure if that helps, but inventory-wise, we haven't had to have more inventory in that. If anything, it helped us reduce it. Because you think about some of the products, like we look at it as we call it the endless aisle. What that means is there's an endless aisle of products, right? You go to a Home Depot store, I don't know, 10, 15,000 items. The endless aisle is online. There is no endless. There's an unlimited amount of items. And so really you allow the consumer to buy online, which you're not really warehousing all those products. Some of those vendors are not a Home Depot product. It's something we're buying from another vendor to pass on to the consumer. So it really doesn't create more inventory in our buildings. Our sites, I don't know the number on the forward side, but we probably hold a certain percentage of those high volume items first, and then everything else is direct from vendor. So it hasn't really created a higher demand for warehousing, if you could say.
And I would point back to what I learned in my first year trying to do returns at Philips. I needed a best friend in finance. And that best friend had to become a drinking buddy with me, okay? Because that was the only way we were going to get me to understand some of that. Unfortunately, it's not taught well enough. But the end-to-end costs are so challenging to measure, and the value of asset recovery is constantly changing. So how do you determine what your total costs are in this space? And cost avoidance that Troy mentioned earlier, how do you measure that? You avoid it going to landfill, but is there a captured value? Yes, there is some. And I don't know, Troy, if you've got a degree in finance either, but it was always a challenge.
Yeah, and it's funny, we get that question asked as an operator from our finance team all the time, like, hey, this is great, but what's it costing you to do this?
Right.
And it's really hard to explain that. Even in our reverse side, we don't have great systems in Home Depot, believe it or not, so it's hard to even get the metrics on what those things would be. So it's a challenge. It really is. It's because we want to do the right thing by landfill avoidance, but that right thing sometimes costs money. Yeah. And that's what's hard to get to the finance team and say, well, this is the right thing to do, but it's going to cost us to do it.
And talking them into putting money into return goods is just, it's a pushing up a mountain.
Yeah, usually we'll go and say, hey, we're going to do this, but we're going to go over here and save X to make up for what we're doing over here. And that's kind of the way we have to do it. Because it's in today's world, like, as you know, we got to, every year we got to do better, save more money, make more money. And we'll find ways to save money so we can spend it a little bit more over here. And whether it be a landfill avoidance or opening a package to make sure it's the right thing we do for fraud avoidance. We never used to do that. We open it now, look at it. That costs a lot of labor to open those packages. But on the flip side, it saved a lot of fraud expense as well.
The holy grail that we always joked about, at least with electronics returns, is 98% of them, there's no fault found. And that's the nightmare to us. The holy grail is or clothing. 98% of that, there's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't fit or they didn't like it, but it's still good. And we really have to work on fixing that. I'm going to let Mary and Joe talk about just a couple of moments on the marketplaces that are evolving, because clearly Home Depot, I recognize and appreciate that they've made it a core competency at their organization because it involves so many areas. Many retailers and manufacturers don't have that option. So Mary, you're working with a lot of retailers and brands developing marketplaces. Can you touch base on that for a moment? And then Joe,
Sure.
you can help.
Sure. Both for retailers and manufacturers, we'll leverage third-party marketplaces like Walmart Plus, eBay, Instagram, TikTok Shop to offload some of their B-grade products or refurbished products. We offer refurbishments as well. Some of the retailers or manufacturers prefer to have us manage an unbranded storefront because they don't want it carries a different warranty,
Right.
if you will. But others prefer that we actually use their brand name to open up an eBay storefront because it brings confidence level with our buyers.
Joe,
Yeah,
will you add to that?
we're seeing a huge, a big increase, I'd say over the last 5 years, of what we would call branded recommerce. So brands and even retailers selling back on their own website or marketplace. And that in the past, as Mary mentioned, some brands were a little nervous about how that would look to their brand. I think a lot of them are now finding that it has a nice sustainability message, and they're really leaning into that message. It's drawing a younger, more sustainability conscious and price conscious younger consumer. So they're kind of adding their future consumers and they're really leaning into that strategy. And it's a win-win because it makes sense for so many reasons. Their marketplace is where there is the most demand for that product. Their marketplace is where you can charge the most for that product.
Right.
They don't have to pay channel fees to some other channel. So, I mean, the recovery is great and it really helps their brand rather than hurt. So we've seen even the most brand conscious brands start leaning into that strategy.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the premium luxury brands are getting into that secondary market. Rolex, among others, they're all starting to do that. I do want to call attention to, as we're wrapping up here, a lot of times people ask, what are we doing about education in this space? And a lot of it is, I know Troy and the rest of us, you basically put someone in a role and they kind of got to learn it. There's not a lot of education available, but I'm really proud to tell you the story of the National Retail Federation did develop an operations course, 5 chapters, and Troy Campbell and Home Depot filled the chapter based on reverse logistics operations. So that's the beginning. We've got more coming. And I'm glad to see, I actually got to sit through the academic awards yesterday, and it was an honor to hear people talk about awards being given for dissertations on sustainability. So there's a lot of push into this direction. I still think circular economy sounds cooler than sustainability, but it's all going to the same place. So I didn't see any other hands. I missed any. Oh, got one more here. Okay.
Just a question for the panel. Do you currently have any reverse logistics programs that involve goods being shipped back to Mexico for remanufacturing or refurbishing?
So I'll start. We don't, but we do have buyers that do that for us. Yeah, so we won't do it directly, but we have some folks that do purchase stuff and send stuff off.
Mary?
Likewise, for liquidity services, we do have buyers that specialize in exporting the liquidated products overseas.
And
It's quite interesting, sorry, because, apparently everybody's doing, it's quite interesting because everybody has the same, thought, but you guys are working independently. I have the experience to work with Hyundai doing the same kind of thing in San Diego and shipping, core engines back to get it redone in Mexico. But I think if more than one manufacturer or company work along the other ones, those shipping facilities or those consolidation facilities will be a better resource where you can leverage from at a cheaper pricing instead of paying a premium for one company that apparently does it, all, so that's great. I didn't know that you guys.
Yep. Well, I'll also point out, Mary didn't acknowledge it, that Liquidity Services is a global operation. So they've got organizations, partners all over the world. And Joe, DHL is global.
Yeah, very global. Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
doing this around the world now?
We are around the world, yeah. And I don't know of any operations we have sending product back to Mexico for repair and refurb right now. I know we have in the past, but I don't think we do.
I think,
We
well,
we used to do refurb in-house in the States and send it back out. And we stopped that during COVID. And really it was wasn't very cost effective for us at all. We were losing money on it every year.
and the other aspect of where does this go to be refurbished, redone, when I tell you a number like 890 billion retail value, where does that stuff go? Now, we think a lot of it goes back on the shelf. We know. But if you think about it, Liquidity Services is roughly a $3 billion global organization, and they're one of the biggest. So take 900 billion, divide by 3 billion, you got a lot of players out there in this space right now. There's some consolidation. Again, the example that Joe gave, DHL acquiring Inmar. But right now, it's a hugely fragmented industry. So everyone looks for partners to accomplish things, as we all do. And that's the challenge, that nobody controls the end-to-end that we talked about, or else they might make the choice and they may have partners or they may have parts of their organization in other countries, which Liquidity does to some degree, so does DHL. But it's a challenge. And I do keep bragging about the fact that there's no tariffs on returns, so we should be doing more with returns, okay, going forward. But thank you for the question. Thank you very much. I think, are we technically out of time here? We're technically out of time. I am going to ask for a big round of applause for Joe, Troy, and Mary. You can grab them and talk to them again individually. And appreciation to CSCMP. Your community is mainly focused on going forward, and we appreciate it when you include us to think about what happens to it when it comes back. So thank you all very much for today. Enjoy the rest of the show.